Well, hello, and welcome to the Crystal Crawford Show. This week, I am going to attempt to tackle something I have been becoming aware of that could potentially piss a lot of you off. And because of that, could also potentially create a whole lot of freedom. And isn't that the way of it? The things that could create the most freedom for you are typically the things that shake your world to its core. So let's see how we go. I just got off the SOUNDCLOUD consciousness call, and I moved the show to Tuesdays so that I could do it right after that call, because that membership is a freaking immense exploration into all things consciousness. And the chapter that we're in right now is the chapter of no competition. But one of the things that came up during the call was this conversation about finding yourself or feeling like yourself. And somebody asked me if I could talk more about that. And so this is my attempt. I had a conversation recently with another person that I used to know a while back. And she's amazing. She's brilliant. We were chatting about an event that occurred 3 or 4 years ago. We both were present for this event. It changed a lot of things for us in different directions. We kind of went our separate ways during this event. And she reconnected with me to really say she was sorry for it and to get my take on what had occurred and etc. And as we were going through this process, one of the things that became really obvious in the process was that we were coming from two very different positions on what occurred, but also in where we were choosing to take our life. And that's where this topic merges. What I recognized through our conversation is that I was going after more and more undefinition, undefining myself, more energy, more space, more consciousness, less feelings, more choice. And she was coming from a totally different place where feelings were important. Working through something was paramount. Feeling like herself was important. Knowing her identity was important. And a number of other things that I'll probably butcher because I just couldn't remember them. What I want to say to you today, and I want to try to extrapolate on today, is that those two worlds are not the same thing. And here's why I think that's important. If what you're looking for is a reality where you have total choice in any moment, if what you're looking for is a reality where you can go through your day and not be triggered, if you're looking for a reality where you have access to choices that nobody else has, if what you're looking for is the space where no matter who has what opinion about what you're doing, you're not rocked, then what you're looking for is a reality where you know, and you get to be, and you perceive things and you receive things, and you get to choose. That reality is the reality of an infinite being. Infinite beings choose, and they are, and they can, and they perceive and they receive, and they're malleable, and they're just have fun, and they're more like kids and animals. In that reality of infinite being, there is no identity. There's no reality, actually. It's funny to even use the word reality with infinite being, because there is no reality in that reality. Weirdly, we have to use English, and it's poor at best. There's just choice and possibility and question and contribution. I'm really interested in that reality, and every single thing that I'm choosing is towards choosing from and as that reality, which isn't a reality at all. It's just a set of choices, a set of possibilities, a set of things that are there that can be chosen or not chosen. It's the creation with the quantum entanglements of the universe. It's all these things that when you start to talk about them sound really like conceptual. Then there's this reality. This reality is based on thoughts and feelings and emotions. When you take a tool like light and heavy, what's light for you is true for you and what's heavy is a lie, and you pull it into this reality's context of feelings, then you've taken an infinite being tool and you've bastardized it into the world of feelings, and it doesn't work anymore. Because what you've done is you've taken a tool that invites you to perceive and sense things, and you've pulled it into this reality of feelings and thinking. And all of a sudden, you now have to feel something that isn't a feeling thing. And so it doesn't seem to work in the same way because you've pulled this light, airy, feathery possibility tool into the mud of feeling and thinking and emotions. And that's what I keep seeing people do. And where do I want to go with this conversation? So the only conversation that I really see as relevant about anything is, does that work? Now, what have you made valuable in your world? What are you using to determine choice? If you are seeking to find yourself, locate yourself, define yourself, feel like you, what's the purpose in looking for those things? Are you looking to be free in those things that you're looking for? Or are you looking to have basis for choice? If it feels like me, then I can choose it. And if it doesn't feel like me, then I can't choose it. Is that the sense of what a choice will create in the future? Or is that giving you a basis for choice? That's how we're taught to do it here. We're taught to invent a basis for choice. And that basis should be something that is defined and clear, instead of choices that really match the sense of a future, which has no solidity to it. Like when you start having a conversation about sensing things, you're into a different world. I think this is what I love so much about facilitating a class like Talk to the Entities. Because essentially what that class teaches you to do is it teaches you to start to function from the sensing world. In the sensing world, you don't feel, you sense. It's different. Senses are whispers, feathers, whispers of possibilities. You have to really practice the more subtle arts in order to sense. Whereas feelings and thoughts and emotions are more dense. And they're the things that we know. Those are the things that we're taught are real. Those are the things we're supposed to create from and as. That's what's valuable here. And so if you're still playing there and you're dabbling in the tools of access consciousness, most likely you're going to probably try to take these tools that access gives you and bring them into the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions world. But if you're wondering why they don't work, it's because they're sensing tools. They're not feeling tools. So with something like light and heavy, for example, feeling what's light and feeling what's heavy is always going to feel broken. It's not going to be enough of a guidance system because you can't feel what you can only sense. Creating an identity for yourself is one of the ways to navigate choice. Discovering what you judge as what you like. Like, you have to use a lot of judgment to develop an identity or to find yourself. You have to use a lot of judgment to do that. So you have to determine what's okay with you, what's not okay with you. You have to decide what this way of behaving is good and this way of behaving is bad. Like, to develop an identity, you have to do a lot of judgment. What's totally other than that is functioning in a world that includes everything and doesn't judge. That's totally other. So if you didn't need to develop an identity via judgment and you could just like include everything and choose, are you willing to be that undefined? You know, are you willing to have that much space and that much possibility? And maybe not. And to be fair with you, I don't know exactly what my point is here. I guess what I'm really getting for myself that I'm attempting to articulate here is like, you got to start to look at what you're choosing and what it's creating. Access consciousness, we talk a lot about, you know, the lower harmonics of being, our thoughts and feelings and emotions and no receiving. And the higher harmonics are being, knowing, perceiving, and receiving. We talk a lot about that. If you take foundation, you're going to learn something about that. But that's all concept until you start to kind of live it, right? What really are indicators of how things are working, what really puts concepts to the test, are what's showing up in your life. If there's a lot of moments in your life where you get stuck, or where things are hard, or where you're doing a lot of struggling or suffering, those are areas of your life where you're still doing a lot of thinking and feeling and emotions and not as much choice. So for your life to work, what's required is just a totally other way of looking at things, which is what access consciousness is constantly inviting us to. It's like, well, you know, if you weren't trying to figure this out and you weren't trying to think your way through it, and this wasn't about how you feel, but it was about what you know and what you're perceiving and what you could really choose, would that be easier? And maybe that's the conversation to start to have with yourself of like, am I willing to have an easier life? And if I were willing, what would I need to change and choose that's different here? Is making light and heavy, for example, into a feeling, making it easier for me to know? Or is it making it harder for me to know? So then what would it take to start to train myself in sensing? What is sensing? How do I sense things? When I know something is true, what's that sensation? And when I know something isn't true, what's that sensation? Starting to teach yourself the world of sensation, because nobody's talking about that. Everybody's talking about, you know, finding yourself, being yourself, feeling like yourself, only choosing the things that align with you. But a totally other world of possibility is like, what's true for you? If you were really including yourself here, what would you choose? If there was no right and there was no wrong, you know, what would be available? What would be possible? So what I would invite you to look at today is is where you're choosing to function from in your life, making your life easier. Are you primarily doing a lot of thinking, a lot of feeling, a lot of emotions? It's not wrong, consciousness includes it. Is it making things easier for you? Do you care about easier? Maybe you don't. I definitely do. If it's not actually really working the way that you want it to work, is there another way of functioning that could be easier? And what would you have to start to teach yourself and train yourself in order to have it? What is functioning from knowing? What's being more? Like, if I were willing to be here, what would I choose? What's really starting to look at what you're perceiving, what you're picking up on, and what you could choose from what you're perceiving? What would receiving be like? And really, really changing the conversation for yourself. Here's what's true. There's no bridge between the worlds. There's no like, sometimes I'm going to think and feel and emote and that's going to work. And sometimes I'm going to know and that's going to work. It's like one functions different than another. There's not a straddle between the two worlds. There's two totally different worlds. Light and heavy is not a feeling tool. It's a sensing tool from this kind of world of possibility. What would you like more of? Would you like more access to what you know? Would you like more access to what you are, the gift that you are? Would you like more access to what you perceive? Would you like more access to the gift that you are? Or are you searching for the definition of you and the feeling of you and the thinking that goes with that you? You can put a lot of energy into defining you and confining you, and that's one way of doing it. You can also choose to put a lot of energy into developing the senses of you, which will create you and institute you as a walking, talking possibility. Which one would be more interesting, more fun, more life worth living for you? This is the conversation I'm interested in having. This is the conversation you're always going to be invited to. InfiniteBeingSchool.com is where you can start as far as I'm concerned. We are going to be having a really, really fun month ahead of us. Exposure to a lot of the vault of my classes, some showings and things like that. So you can jump in there now. You can jump in there at any time. And what I'd invite you to look at is like, are you trying to straddle the realities? Can it work? If you can't straddle, then what will you choose? What's going to create life worth living for you? We'll see you next week.